Whispers of the North, Partita for violin and piano, which was composed by Zhou. I'll structure my lecture into four main parts: an introduction, the background of Zhou, and Partita for violin and piano. In the subsequent lecture, I employ Partita as an abbreviated form in place of the full title of the composition. And I'm going to briefly talk about the analysis of the Partita. In the third section, I'll be exploring how we approach fingering choices on the violin from a pedagogical point of view. Finally, I'll conclude with a summary of the key points. Here is a representative comment on Zhou. Hubert Goulart said, by turns colorful, meditative, mysterious, rhythmically alert, showcasing a remarkable subtlety, aided by formidable flair for arresting texture and a great rhythmic variety. The Partita exemplifies the composer's ability to seamlessly blend Eastern and Western musical traditions. Alan Kozin, writing in the New York Times, highlights Zhou ability to combine Chinese and Western traditions. And in 2011, Zhou received international recognition when he won the Pulitzer Prize for his opera, Madame Whitesnake, becoming the first Chinese-born composer to do so. Zhou was born in 1953 in Beijing. His father was a professor of fine art, and his mother was a vocal professor in Central Conservatory of Music. Zhou began studying piano at the age of 5. In his early years, China was going through massive social changes, especially the Cultural Revolution. Zhou, as an urban youth, was sent to the rural area as part of the Shandong Youth Movement. While working in Heilongjiang province, he studied music theory and composition during his limited free time. Later, in the 1970s, he worked at the Zhangjiakou Song and Dance Troupe, arranged music for choirs and percussion groups. These hands-on experiences with folk and percussion music shaped his deep understanding of Chinese traditional sounds, especially percussion textures, which became an important part of his unique style. In 1977, Zhou entered the Central Conservatory of Music after the National College exam restarted. Zhou received a formal training in composition and theory there, studying with distinguished mentors, including Luo Zhongrong and Li Yinghai. His education emphasized folk songs, traditional opera, and narrative musical forms, which strongly influenced his early works. By combining pentatonic and modal scales with pendiatonic and polytonal techniques, Zhou created a language that bridges Chinese musical aesthetics and modern Western harmony. This becomes a hallmark of his compositional style. In 1985, Zhou pursued a DMA degree at Columbia University. There, he studied with composers like Zhou Wenzhong and Mario Davidovsky. At the beginning of his study there, he struggled to adjust to the new compositional environment because Chinese training focused on traditional techniques, while the US training focused on experimental and highly abstract music. He even described his first years in New York as a time of creative silence, as he tried to find his own sound between these two very different worlds. Eventually, Zhou Long had a breakthrough. He began reconnecting with his Chinese roots, using elements like traditional instruments in his composition. Wu Ji, a chamber work for piano, zheng, and percussion, which was composed in 1987 and published in New York in 1990, marked a big turning point. He blended traditional Chinese ideas with modern techniques like 12-tone writing, pitch class sets, and new interval structures. Today, Zhou Long is recognized worldwide. His works have been performed by major orchestras like the London Symphony Orchestra, Los Angeles Philharmonic, and the China Philharmonic Orchestra. His music has been recorded by major labels, and his scores are published by Oxford University Press. Zhou Long's life and career show how cultural exchange can inspire new and powerful musical languages, blending traditions from both East and West into something truly unique. Partita was composed in 1983 when Zhou Long was still an undergraduate student. The original title of this composition was A Zi Mode Sonata. A Zi comes from the traditional Chinese key mode. Unlike Western music, which is based on fixed harmonic progress, Chinese music emphasizes modal fluidity and melodic contour. To have a better interpretation of A Zi mode, we need to know what does both A and Zi mean. In traditional Chinese modal theory, there is a fixed pattern that also forms a cyclical system: gong, shang, jue, zhi, and yu. Any one of these tones can serve as the central tone, while the order among them remains unchanged. This allows a great expressive freedom. We have whole steps between gong and shang and jue, zhi and yu. We have minor thirds between jue and zhi, yu and gong. This creates an open consonant sound without semitones, which gives Chinese music its unique color. I'm going to use Qigong mode as an example. Treat C natural as the central tone, as well as gong. According to the interval between gong and shang, D natural should be the second note. In the same way, the whole Qigong mode scale is C natural, D natural, E natural, G natural, and A natural, which sounds like this. In this particular work, Zhou Long treats A natural as the central tone, placing the scale in zhi mode, which follows the order of zhi, yu, gong, shang, jue. This means that the scale begins on A natural and continues with the note a whole step above A natural, which is B natural. And then, according to this rule, we have D natural, E natural, and F sharp following. It sounds like this. Using the A Zi mode gave Zhou Long's piece a distinctly Chinese flavor, even though the harmonic structure followed the Western sonata tradition. In 2006, Zhou Long revised and recomposed the piece at the request of the violinist Hong In He. He also changed the title to Partita for violin and piano to make it easier for international audiences to understand. He felt that the title A Zi Mode Sonata might confuse listeners who were unfamiliar with Chinese musical traditions. The word partita, commonly used in Western music to describe instrumental suites, was much more relatable. According to my interview with Zhou, the first version of the partita was performed by the famous composer Chen Yi, who is Zhou's wife, as the violinist, and her sister Chen Ming as the pianist. Now I'm going to walk you through the 4 movements and share a brief analytical look at each one. Because we don't have much time, I'll just cover the main points. If this piece interests you, feel free to chat with me about it later. The first movement of partita is rooted in the typical northern Chinese folk song, specifically originating from Shanxi province, carrying the character of a love song. Throughout the first movement, the frequent changes of rhythmic patterns and tempos help continuously develop the central theme. Flexible timing, improvisation-like, and expressive phrasing add to the emotional depth of the piece. At the same time, the violin and piano not only create vivid contrast, but also intertwine closely, resembling a lyrical duet of love songs. In terms of the structure, this movement adopts the traditional Western sonata form: exposition, development, and recapitulation, which also mirrors the classical Chinese literary concept of qi, cheng, zhuan, and he. Qi can be seen as the exposition of the main theme and tonal center, but it doesn't always emphasize the key as clearly as the exposition in Western sonata form. Both cheng and zhuan can be regarded as developments. In Western sonata form, the development section is the point of key modulation, thematic variation, and contrast, while cheng emphasizes the continuation and elaboration of material. Zhuan emphasizes emotional or narrative change more explicitly. He shows the return of themes, which is similar to the recapitulation in sonata form, although it may not strictly return the original key. These characteristics may appear in some Chinese compositions, but not all. The score here shows the first 7 bars of the first movement, which form the introduction, which is performed solely by the piano. This functions as an yin zi in traditional Chinese composition. It is expressive and flowing, marked by a strong sense of improvisation and lyrical charm. It spans a wide vocal range. The right-hand melody in the relatively high register and the left-hand melody in the lower register is kind of a call and response form of northern Shanxi love duets, often exchanged between male and female voice. Let's welcome my pianist Xiang to play this for you. beginning of the Qi section, which can also be seen as the exposition. The violin continues the introduction's melodic material, but now it becomes more lyrical and tender. The piano supports with flowing arpeggios, creating a soundscape that evokes the imagery of lofty mountains and flowing waters, known in Chinese culture as Gaoshan Liushui. The piano's arpeggiated figures descend gradually from the high to the low registers, like a silk thread gently lifting and cradling the violin's melody. And we're going to play a part of it. The second movement captures the spirit of northern Shanxi work songs, a traditional form of Chinese folk music often known as labor chants. These work songs typically feature a lead singer and a responding group, with a solid rhythmic pattern, strong repetition, and simple yet powerful melodies. Their main purpose is to enhance physical cooperation and build a sense of community. In this movement, Zhou composed between 2/4 and 3/4 time signatures, creating a slightly irregular but forceful rhythmic drive. This shifting rhythm mirrors the shouts and coordinated movements of workers during heavy labor. There are also dramatic modulations, such as sudden key change from 5 sharps to 5 flats. This kind of bold tonal shift is more typical of late romantic music and helps create strong emotional tension. Here is the motive, which is also the chant. And in measure 7, which follows immediately, the second theme emerges, characterized by a longer and more sustained phrasing. Then the motive and the second theme alternate and intertwine continuously, making this movement rich and full in texture. The third movement creates an ethereal and tranquil atmosphere by using the violin harmonics and contraddino throughout the whole movement. It is quite unusual for the violin to be played with a mute for the entire movement in a partita or sonata, so it can be seen as an instruction of this movement. In other words, this is how Zhou would like the movement to be. It should evoke the feeling of the sound drifting in from afar. The violin's harmonics, following the piano's notes with pedal, create a Zen-like sound. The overall structure of this movement follows a clear ternary form. The first 24 bars act as the introduction. The violin is an echo of the piano, creating for the listener the atmosphere of a temple bell ringing in a mountain valley. Here, we can see the composer uses the 4th intervals. This interval is very typical of northern Shanxi folk music, and it gives the music a simple and stable feeling. In section A, the violin part has a very flat melodic contour, sustaining the A pitch for 2 bars at piano dynamic. The piano supports this with arpeggios, creating a wave-like background, allowing the violin melody to flow gently, like a boat on water. This feeling naturally connects back to the peaceful and spiritual mood set up by the bell sound in the introduction. In this movement, Zhou uses duplets in the violin part against triplets in the piano part frequently. This creates a slight tension while also giving a feeling of expansion. The fourth movement uses variation form. It is inspired by northern Shanxi work songs and mountain songs. The movement opens in 4/4 time signature with the tempo marking Allegro vivace. The violin starts with a series of leaping figures based on 4th and 5th intervals, creating a strong sense of forward momentum. The piano answers with vertical block chords and sharp accents, capturing the shouting quality you often hear in traditional Chinese work songs. There are 5 variations in this movement. The first variation has a lyrical and flowing character, like a mountain song. The second variation has the same feeling from the opening, block chords in the piano part, and violin's double stops and chords make the melody more powerful. The third variation is an inversion of the main theme, uses a new folk-like theme. The music reaches its climax at the 4th variation. Zhou uses triplets, quintuplets, sextuplets, and septuplets with fast running notes spanning a wide range of registers in the violin. At the same time, the piano maintains a solid rhythmic pattern underneath, which highlights the violin's virtuosic melody. The main theme returns in the 5th variation. Now, the piano doesn't serve only as the accompaniment. It shares the melody with the violin. The violin performs the theme an octave higher using double stops compared to the opening. Now I'm going to discuss violin pedagogy related to this piece. Different fingerings may make the sound or feeling totally different. Sometimes the fingerings on the score is not suitable for us, or cannot express the mood exactly. So we need to adjust the fingering according to our own interpretation and technical level. I'm going to use 2 examples to explain it. Here are measure 44 to 62 of the second movement. There is no fingering here, so before we write in fingerings, we first need a general idea of the structure and musical content. This understanding will help us choose the most suitable fingerings. This section begins with a lyrical violin melody that lies mostly on the E and A strings. At measure 51, there is a Zhou G indication that lasts for 3 measures, meaning all the notes within these three measures should be played on the G string. After that, the melody returns to the D string, then the A string, and finally arrives again on the E string. From measure 57, double stops appear in the forte dynamic and in the high register. Structurally, this passage can be divided into three smaller sections: measure 44 to 50, 51 to 56, and 57 to the end. It is clear that all three sections share the same motive. They almost repeat the same melody, but in different registers. The change in register results in a change in character and sound quality. The E and A strings sound brighter than the D and G strings. A higher register on the violin is always brighter and more delicate, whereas a lower register is warmer and fuller. We can easily imagine the higher register as a soprano and the lower register as a tenor, especially considering that many Chinese folk songs are written as duets, featuring one female and one male voice. If we don't write in fingerings, some players might choose to play measure 44 on the E string, but the slur carries over into the next measure, and that phrase really needs to be played on the A string. At such a soft dynamic, that string crossing can easily break the line, and it's very hard to keep it perfectly smooth, especially when we are trying to imitate a female singing voice. It sounds like this when we use the simplest fingerings, which are all on the first position. Think about a soprano. When she sings, there's no little pause or scratchy noise like the crunch a violin might make when changing bow direction or switching strings. So for this reason, playing measure 44 on the E string isn't ideal. The line will simply sound more vocal and more connected if there is no string crossing, which means it should be played entirely on the A string. To figure out the best fingering, we can start by deciding which position we want to use in the upcoming measures, and then work backward. In measure 45, both the first and second positions work, because each only requires one string crossing, and that's on the last beat. The third position, on the other hand, would need two string crossings like this. It is one string crossing, and there are two string crossings, so it isn't ideal. My suggestion is to use the second position. So the first note of measure 45 should be played with the second finger. To imitate a soprano sound, we'll need to do a same finger shift. So, looking back at measure 44, the F sharp should be played with the second finger. And moving backward, the G sharp should be played with the third finger. This means measure 44 starts in fourth position and then shifts to the second position in measure 45. It is also better to play measure 44 on the A string rather than the E string, because the dynamic there is very soft, and the composer clearly wants a gentle, delicate sound, not something brilliant. So now these two bars sounds like. Another example comes from measure 8 and 9 in the first movement. Under usual circumstances, because there is a D3 in measure 9, we would simply stay in third position to avoid shifting. However, because this piece incorporates many Chinese folk elements, shifting becomes a way to imitate the soprano vocal style. In fact, we sometimes even exaggerate the shifting to make this feature more obvious. In measure 8, we have B, E, and A, which would normally require 2 string crossings if we stay in third position. Instead, I change positions here in order to create a vocal style shift and bring out the Chinese character of the phrase. I stay in third position for the first several notes to avoid open strings and the fourth finger. Then move to the first position on the E and return to third position on the A. So now it sounds like this. This fingering not only emphasizes the folk song quality and imitates a soprano line, but also avoids extra string crossings and keeps the tone color consistent. In measure 9, we have 2 repeated A's. Normally, we would simply play both with the first finger, but that would sound a bit flat and colorless, like this. And in Chinese music, when 2 identical notes appear consecutively, we often add a slide between them for expression. So here, the best way to create that expressive glissando is to play the second A on the A string with the third finger. That means shifting from third position to fifth position. Another benefit of using the third finger is that it allows us to create another glissando from A to F. So now it sounds like this. In Partita, Zhou blends Chinese folk traditions like pentatonic scales, timbres inspired by traditional instruments, and unique tone colors with contemporary Western compositional techniques, creating a truly individual musical voice. Rather than directly quoting traditional Chinese melodies, Zhou focuses on expressing qiyun, the musical spirit and inner resonance, while still following the formal principles of Western sonata structure. That's all of my lecture. And we're going to have a 5-minute brief intermission, and then I'm going to perform it. introduce Zhou Lang's Partita. It also highlights how traditional Chinese music connects with Western music. I also hope to share some practical suggestions for violin students from a pedagogical point of view. I hope this helps everyone better understand how music from different cultures can come together, and also highlights Zhou Lang's significance in today's global classical music scene. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to Dr. Zhou for his generous insights and guidance through our interviews, which greatly contributed to this work. I'm also deeply grateful to my doctoral mentor, Professor Genualdi, and also Xiang's mentor, Dr. Smith, for their dedicated mentorship, thoughtful feedback, and constant encouragement throughout our studies. Their guidance has truly shaped this lecture. I would thank my parents for their unwavering support and encouragement. I would like to thank my fiancé, Xiang, for his support and help throughout this process. His understanding and encouragement have meant so much to me. And finally, but not the least, I'd like to thank all of you for coming today and supporting me.